start with interns. Start with you.
Lance Wilmer, OMB Director.
Mike Abbott, Municipal Manager.
Amy DeBoski.
Bill Evans.
Jennifer Johnston.
I'll be Gray Johnson.
Jim Steele. Pete Peters.
Okay, Nancy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to do today is just take an opportunity. I know we're scheduled for 2 hours, but I think we could probably run through. I have about a dozen slides I'd like to review with the Assembly, and I think we can probably be out of here within an hour.
Okay, can you pause for a moment?
Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to recognize that Mr. Flynn just joined us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to do is I have a short presentation that I've kind of organized in 5 different areas. Review of the operating budget to highlight the administration's S version that will be submitted and be reviewed for the Assembly's consideration on Tuesday night. And then I have summarized the proposed Assembly amendments that you discussed a week ago today, and some of those that we were able to incorporate either in part or in whole, and others we recommend that they're not. There's some other couple projects in the capital budget, some proposed adjustments from the Utilities Enterprise, the Anchor Street Development Authority, and then I know that when the reorg came up from the executive branch, there were some changes that needed to be made, so an RS version we prepared will include those. So let me just start off with a highlight of the S version of the administration's budget. For the Assembly, when we submitted our proposed budget, we did not include all of the adjustments that the Assembly had proposed. 2 highlights, as you may recall from the work session that we had. There are some staff adjustments and some contract adjustments with a net savings of about $40,000. One of the things that we did do is the ZIG contract had about $200,000 in it, I believe from 2015, or $90,000 in 2015. The balance of that will carry over into 2016, and that's reflected in the S version, so the ZIG contract will continue. So that's the adjustments that you'll see for the Assembly. For Development Services, when we proposed the S budget, we had the E-Plan surcharge going into 181 fund, which is the Development Services Building Service Area Fund. However, when we borrowed the money, when we added the money into the budget, we actually borrowed it from the 101 fund. So the surcharge will go back into the 101 fund to pay where we borrowed the money from. For Health and Human Services, we made some adjustments as it relates to the approval of the fines and fees. The $8,864 was in relation to the niche portions of the animal control, and there was some other little pieces, but that was to the cemetery, and there were some other issues related to animal control. We accommodated those. Police and fire, we made some adjustments when we adjusted the ranges from I think 3 to 9 and 10 to 13. When we made those adjustments as approved in the ordinance, these would be the additional fines and fees would be potentially received. The pre-funding, as a result of the pre-funding adjustment from 900 and something to 700 and something, we need to accommodate the 186,000, so in our S version we've done that. For the fire department, when we talked initially, we talked about the need to increase, or the desires to increase the firefighter positions. We talked about 10 initially. So working with the chief and discussing our options with the administration, what we're proposing now is we had about $450,000 in overtime, additional overtime expense. The cost of 5 new positions is what we can accommodate in the money that we have as proposed, and they would begin in July. So you'll see a reduction in their overtime and an addition of 5 positions from July as a result of the academy. So they're going to have an academy with, I think, 25 people they expect, 25 people they expect an attrition of roughly 15, and at the end they graduate 25, and if for some reason they don't, then we'll go back to the fire department and see if they want to move these back into overtime. But this is the way in which we can accommodate that. Then the last one, though it's not reflected in the table, but it is reflected in the ordinance, we added a section 11. When we crafted the ordinance, we did not include the revenues in support of E911. So when you look at the ordinance, not the text portion, you'll see in section 11 we added in the E911 charges that we should have. So those are the highlights of what you're going to see in the administration's proposal. If I could just turn to maybe the, Madam Chair, do you have any questions on those, or shall I proceed? Okay, thank you. So I know the Assembly had about 50 proposed amendments. Many of them were similar in nature, so what I've attempted to do is just summarize where those amendments are. There was an amendment to propose to increase some senior activity fees for about $5,700 to accommodate some inflation. The amendment would include those. The S version does include those. There was a suggestion that we start centralizing our accounting functions from outside the departments into the finance department, particularly in the list of departments you see here. Reached out to those departments as well as the CFO, and two things were brought to my attention. One, the capacity to take over those additional duties within finance do not exist right now. They are pretty much tapped out with the resources and things that they have. The other comment that was brought to my attention from many of the departments was many of the grants and administrative duties they do are unique to some of these departments and require a lot of care and feeding, in a sense, kind of a checks and balance between one and the other. So while the idea of centralization has some merit in places, in the administration's belief in this particular situation that centralized accounting, particularly for these departments, does not make sense. So the administration is not going to support these proposed amendments.
Please, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, thank you.
I have two questions on this one. One is, when you looked into this, did you look into whether any one of these positions had their own classification and whether it would initiate termination studies, or are they part of another classification of employees? I think that might need to be answered before we get.
I did not do that, but that's a good question.
And then the other question I have as the administration is, you asked as far as assuming some of these responsibilities within the, centralizing them, and you didn't feel that you could do that. Was there the other question I would like asked is, are some of these underutilized, or could some of these be combined? I mean, I know the person that does this in planning is very highly capable, and I don't know if that's something that planning and public works could be combined. Anyways, I would like to look at that.
Anything else, Ms. Johnson? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Please continue.
So this is a summary of some of the next proposed amendments. The proposed amendment from the Assembly was to reduce the long-range planning staff from 7 to 3 positions. I received a very detailed response from the planning department about the value that they add in here. We shared that with the administration, and based on their review and the comments of this one, many plans that they are currently working on, while I know that there were some discussions about some of the merits of those planning documents, they also serve other roles in helping develop them too. So the administration is not going to support this amendment as is proposed.
Ms. Johnson?
Could the administration provide us before Tuesday night with a list of those plans?
Absolutely.
And the status of the plans, and I think also with that it would be helpful if you had, we've had wetland plans that we need for core, what's the relationship with other agencies and why they're needed, and so some further explanations.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Please continue.
The next 2 bullets are recommendations to reduce or eliminate the Mayor's Community Grant Program. The first one would be basically a reduction, but retaining the Anchorage Youth Court, the Covenant House, and the Campfire, as it was described on last week. And then the next one is to eliminate the entire program for $750,000, excuse the formatting on the bullets. We looked into the history and the value of both of these, and one of the things, and I think this is one of the Assembly members asked in the question, well, has the Assembly in the past attempted to eliminate or significantly reduce the program. Based on our information, I think back in 2008, there was a recommendation to reduce it by $1 million, and that did not pass. And $1 million basically was, and it was progressive. It really, I can't recall if it took out the entire grant program. And many of you may recall the grant programs used to be scattered across from different departments, and they got combined into one, into the mayor's office. And so, in recognizing both of these proposals, the administration looked at what they do, the value of the programs they're supporting, and does not support amendment for either reducing it or eliminating it. So, and if you need a current list of the proposed grant programs, we can provide that to you in the amount that they're currently getting, and certainly provide that to you as well.
Mr. Trainee?
Lance, would you provide that to the body?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
One comment, that list, unless it's increased, was provided to us on the last agenda with the revenue report. It's an attachment to that.
It's
So-
different.
Is it different now?
I'll make sure it's the same.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
And then the last bullet on the school resource officers reducing the increased funding by $1 million. Really, the idea here, as it was proposed, was to modify the hours of the school resource officers down to 5 8s from 4 10s, and maybe have some savings in there in the allocation of staff. And in talking to Chief Mew, or looking back in the, not talking to him directly, but looking at his intent when this idea came forward, was prior to the conclusion of the current contract that we have with the police force, so with the APDEA. So while the concept was, I think, brought forth during the negotiation process and ultimately the conclusion of the signed contract, the contract currently does not allow this proposal. However, if something was to be done like this, the mechanism, I believe, in which it would need to be done would be some type of a letter of agreement. However, the concept was brought forward, wasn't included in the agreement, and so if we wanted, if it was to be pursued, that's how it would be pursued. The current contract wouldn't promote us to do it, so we don't support it this time.
Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is just informational for Lance and Mike. I talked to Derek Shore about this issue, I don't know, 2 years ago. And he was, I would call it, amenable to the idea of going to 5 8s for the SROs. But gently suggested that our trying to force it down their throats wouldn't go very well. So if I could encourage the administration to revisit this as one of our agreements, I think that would be the best way to approach it.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Bosky?
I just want to clarify what this amendment is, because I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding from the administration standpoint. Number one, it clearly can be done because the money is taken from the new recruits. That's where the money's coming from in the budget amendment. But I also demonstrate an ability to save that money in the new recruits if they were to do this. So it gives the administration basically an idea. You can have basically your cake and eat it too. You can maintain the SRO program and potentially shift 8 officers to patrol or other units immediately. But you could also save the money and keep it for the new recruits. So I think when they say it's not, you can't do it because of the contract, I recognize it needs a letter of agreement in order to do the SRO shift in their schedule. But I took it directly from a specific line item in the budget, so it absolutely could be done. And that's why I said, in the last administration, and I did have a personal conversation with Chief Mew about this more than once, and it really would take a letter of agreement. It's not that it can't be done. It's, if the union doesn't want to do it, then it would come from the new recruit money. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But if they would want to do it, we could preserve both, I guess is my point.
Thank you, Mr. Bosky, Mr. Steele, and then Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, my concern on that is service to the other schools. If it was just the high schools, it would be one thing. But they also provide the service to 8 elementary schools and middle schools in that particular area as well. And that leaves one officer by himself.
Madam Chair. I'm going to move this amendment, so we'll debate it on Tuesday night, because I don't want to discuss this with Mr. Steele right now, because I think he has some valid points. But I also have more information that I'd like to present at that
Now,
time.
Mr. Bosky, I appreciate that we're not gonna have a debate here, because we should not. Anything else, Mr. Steele? Thank you, Mr. Steele, Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, the administration doesn't support downsizing the SRO workforce. So regardless of whether we could go to 5/8s or there's even some models in other communities for 5/10s, the administration would still recommend at least 2 officers per high school service or attendance area. So the school system would certainly appreciate the possibility of having folks work 5-day shifts rather than 4. I think that was one of the roots of this initially. But even if the officers were on 5-day shifts, the administration would still recommend a deployment of approximately 17 officers to the school resource detachment. So we would not be endorsing or recommending a shrinkage in the SRO detachment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Wilbur, please continue.
Madam Chair. The next group of proposed amendments from the Assembly, one was to increase 3 officers for animal control to add $280,000. While the administration does not support adding $280,000, in talking with the folks at DHHS, I think we can accommodate adding $130,000, which would be the cost of 1 officer to about $74,000, and then we would add some for the contract to support the contractual services. We would add about $56,000 there, and so we would propose that we could accommodate part of this request. We heard some comments from folks when they testified that this was something that they wanted to see, so you'll see in the S version $130,000 for animal control. On the travel moratorium, there was a removal of proposal to remove all of the travel or move travel from various departments. So I think this one and the last slide, I'll come to the last slide because there's a proposal to reduce travel in many departments, but the administration does not support a moratorium on travel for 2016. The one on the bottom is a proposal to allocate fund balance, $5 million of the $7 million as part of this budget. I think as it was brought up last time, if there's going to be an allocation of fund balance to reduce the burden of taxpayers, it would be more ideal to take this up in the first quarter when we actually know what our fund balance is. We're not recommending any adjustments at this time. The last slides of the Assembly amendments as it relates to the operating budget were a group of either removal or reduce of travel appropriations, supplies, and furniture and fixtures from various departments. And as it relates to these, and for particularly, travel, I want to make the Assembly aware that when the administration asked all departments to prepare their budgets with a 2% reduction in 2016, many of them had accommodated that either through a combination of these or other things that they reduced in order to retain the amount of supply budget that they had, or furnitures or fixtures or whatever it may have been. So I'm confident that the proposals that they gave us when we submitted it are good, and not only that, they had made other adjustments in order to retain these. In particular to travel, I think Assemblymember Starr mentioned that, how is the administration going to keep track of travel and its authorization and its use? I brought this matter up with the mayor and his executive team, and this is our basic approach on how travel will be adjusted or accommodated for all departments. Each director has a budget for their travel, whatever it may be. The director is then responsible for maintaining that budget item for travel. After that, it goes to their executive manager, so they'll either go to Mr. Abbott, Mr. Schutte, or Mr. Harris for that, for their final approval as it's in their budget. If a department wants to move their non-labor from supplies to travel, to up their travel, it's gotta come through me. And I wanna know that that's there, and if there's an adjustment, and I say an OMB, what is the logic of that? And so really, I don't wanna see a department budget 5,000 and then spend 7 thinking they can move it out of supplies. That's not the intention of the way we're building this budget. If they have 5,000, they have 5,000. If they needed 7, they should have put 7 in and done an adjustment. Obviously, things will come up, and when those adjustments are made, they're gonna have to justify the adjustment from some non-labor. So that's how travel requests and approvals will occur without the, I forgot what the name of the committee was before,
Cost containment committee.
the cost containment committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So if I can make one comment, just for clarification. So what you're saying, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Zolber. So what you're saying is, if fire has a line item for travel for $3,000, and they decide, well, we don't have enough, so we can move some from supplies, because it looks like we'll have some extra money in supplies, if you're not gonna allow that, or?
No, I didn't say that I wouldn't allow it, but it
That's
has
why
to-
that's
no,
why I'm asking you, yeah.
No, it could be allowed, but it's not gonna be, it could be
Automatic.
allowed, but we need to know what justification is, not
Right.
just, yes, so that I gotta.
Right,
come down
and
to
I know that when
justification.
money's transferred from one account to the other, for OMB, as a approve it anyway, so I just wanted some clarification on that, and you did it to me. Thank you. Please
And,
continue.
and I think as the Assembly is well aware, every quarter you get a review of the, the travel expenses from the departments, and that's gonna continue as well.
Thank you.
So it's a summary of all of the operating budget proposed amendments from the Assembly and where the administration is standing on those. The next is the S version of the capital budget from the administration. There will be a proposal to take Turnigan Boulevard, which is like Bernard to 35th, for $6.2 million and move it out to 2017. When I contacted the departments, one of the questions that I asked them was, are we confident in our estimates based on what we know now? And in regards to Turnigan, what they know now is they need about $2 million more than the 6.2 that we would have in the bond. And I suggested that it would not be a good idea with $6.2 million in a bond and then ask for $2 or $3 million in the following year. So we go out with one proposal. Sylvan Drive, the Assembly proposed that would be added. We heard some comments from folks in the public. It's a reduced cost project, so this one would be proposed to be added into the 2016 bond. I confirmed with the PM&E if we did that, are we far enough along the design to be confident in the number, and are we confident enough that we can actually do it? I started in 16, I got answers to yes to both of those. So the administration is recommending that we show this in yes version. From the Assembly, proposed amendments as it relates to the capital budget, Sylvan Drive, we just spoke about that one, the ML&P, not ML&M, whole yard. 1.1 million, we reached out to ML&P and talked to Mr. Johnson about if we wanted to buy the site, is the site a proper site of location and size? As it relates to location, Mr. Johnson felt that it was not the best site for a pole yard while they are using it for that purpose. And then obviously, if there was going to be any purchase of the yard, if it was of value as it relates to location and use, we would likely do an environmental assessment of the site before we just put money aside to buy it. So I have a much lengthier explanation from ML&P, and I'd be willing to share that with the Assembly. Based on the information we got from ML&P, the administration does not support this whole yard purchase.
Mr. Flynn?
Yeah, Lynn, could you give us the data from ML&P of the estimated cost for an environmental assessment?
I can do that.
because that might be a good substitute amendment, at the first word.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. And before I go to Mr. Steele, I'm sure Mr. Starr, who this is his proposal, would really appreciate seeing the details.
Okay.
And maybe the rest of us would. Mr. Steele?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand the Turnigan Boulevard Spinard Road issue. You're saying you're taking Turnigan off the bond package because you need more in the Spinard
But
Road?
we know that if we put it on in 16, we're gonna have to ask for more money in
Gotcha.
17.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Madam Chair. The third proposal was to add Cavalier Strip Road to the 2016 bond for this project here, which would include pedestrian and a trail for $5.5 million into 216. While we value it, I mean, this is an important project, I think one of the priorities in PM&E, but a couple things are into play. PM&E is seeking grant funds, and I can't recall the exact likelihood of them getting them, but there were from the feds, from the federal government, to help support at least part of this project, about $1.9 million that would support the bike and head pedestrian portion of the project. And we should know about whether or not we're going to be successful in the next, I think within the next year, maybe even sooner than that. So based on the amount of the bond that we currently have, and based on this proposal and some opportunities to receive some money to offset that, we don't support putting this one in the 2016 bonds at this time.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I actually got some additional information today from the Bachelor Community Council about the request for the grant to work on the pedestrian and bike trail part of this project. And I think they're going to be getting somewhere around $2.1 billion, if I understood the email correctly. And the plan is that they're going to be actually doing the work this summer. And so I would think it would make sense if we're going to do the trails and bike path portion, we should be doing the widening road at the same time, because it probably would end up costing more to do them at different times.
Through the chair, if I could just respond to you. So, Mr. Peterson, what I'll do is I'll reach out to PM&E, find out what they know about the status of the grant, while they may be receiving the grant, whether or not they can actually execute it inside, when we receive it from the feds this year, our ability to incorporate it into our system and then put it out to bid. I'm gonna find out what that is and to see if that's a 16 number or if it's a 2017 number. And I would completely agree, we don't wanna be in there twice with two construction projects.
Right.
I hadn't heard that, but I will reach out to them.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Wilbur. Ms. Johnston?
I'm not sure, my senior moment right now. What is the total of the 2016 bond proposed by the administration?
So it would be, it's in the S version, it's gonna be,
The final bond package has not been developed, hasn't been introduced, and
So it isn't a senior moment.
No,
No.
it's not. So, I think you should, we're working on a variety of bond ideas or suggestions, all of which are contemplated in the capital improvement program. So I think you're looking at something in the $40+ million range at this point.
And what are we retiring?
it's gonna be between, I think it's around 37.
Are correct? I agree.
When you say 40, you mean all municipal bonds, save school districts?
Correct. The package of 4 to 6 bonds in the $40-something million range.
It's just, I mean, I know we'll get another bite of the apple when it comes to,
Our tentative plan is to introduce ordinances in December, maybe as early as December 8th, certainly no later than December 22nd.
just
And I
makes
don't
it a
know
little
what the school
difficult.
district's timeline is either. They're later than they have been in previous years because they've been working on a different approach. But I believe they'll be introducing in December as well, but I don't know which meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Flynn, and Mr. Abbott. I have a just a follow-up question based on some comments that were made. Mr. Flynn asked if the bond that you mentioned includes the school district, and you said yes, and it's 40-something.
No.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry, my
I didn't-
mistake.
you said
If I
yes.
said that, I misspoke.
Yeah, you did.
No, these would just be the general government
That's what I thought. Thank you.
package.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Mr. Wilbur, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. believe that's, those were the three proposed amendments we got from the Assembly. A couple other comments, proposed amendments as it relates to the utility and ACDA. There was a recommendation from the Assembly to propose combining the duties of the internal affairs for the Board of Anchorage and Municipal Light and Power into a single position. It would be a reduction of about $75,000, $337,500 from both the Port of Anchorage and Municipal Light and Power. Based on the proposal, the administration is not supportive of this proposed amendment.
I'll just note the unique
Mr. Flynn, are you ready to talk?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Flynn?
I'll just note the unique synergistic opinions of the Sullivan and Berkowitz administrations.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Continue, Mr. Wilbur.
That's probably the only one.
Sure. The next item is, we had there was a, I don't know if it was an amendment, or it was an amendment to delay, ACDA has in their budget professional services, and the recommendation was to delay the funding of $162,000 for the professional services until the first quarter. And I spoke with Chris Schutte, and I believe the Assembly had received a response on this one. And based on the response, the administration is not going to support this proposed amendment. And if you need more information on this one, we'll be able to provide that as well.
Ms. Johnson, anything?
I'll be meeting with Mr. Halpro on Monday, so.
Okay, great.
We'll
Thank
see.
you, Mr. Wilbur, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the last one I want to just point out is, I tried to summarize this one. In the executive reorganization, I think there's a couple comments that were brought up. The word amend to be removed from the planning department section. The planning department can amend Title 21. That will be stricken. And then we're revising the language as it relates to police and fire medical trust, so that the reporting and the mayor is consistent with the amendment or what the ordinance that currently stands as it relates to police and fire. So we just want to make sure that they're consistent. We're not making any adjustments. We're just making them consistent when they weren't what we proposed. So that's basically the highlights of the reorg as we're proposing in here. So I think that's all the questions. That's all that we have. If you have any other questions, if there's something else that you need, let me know, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can.
Any other questions from anybody? Ms. Johnson, you gotta raise that.
Well,
chair.
you know, it's a continual problem. I either touch the floor.
It's already up.
It's not high enough for me.
See, tall versus short.
I just like, I don't, when my legs swing, it just doesn't. So, just a standard question, since all of your amendments in the S versions are an increase in the budget, where does that put us with the tax cap?
We are $261,000 under.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
261,403, I believe.
Any other questions before we end this meeting?
Are you sure that's the
Travis,
same,
would you like
that's
to-
close in the last?
I thought it was 280,000 before any of the increases. Was that wrong? about
So
that?
as a combination of the, in the attachment, it's 261, because when we made the adjustments to the fines and fees, and then we made the adjustments for the trust, and then we add these additional things in,
Okay.
that's how we got to the 261.
Okay, any other questions? No? Mr. Bosky?
I'll save my comments for Tuesday.